Olivia Carter stared at the rejection email on her laptop screen, the 20th one this month. At 24 years old with a marketing degree from a decent university, she thought finding a job would be easier. But the reality of post-graduation life had hit her like a freight train. Her savings account was nearly empty, rent was due in a week, her mother's concerned phone calls were becoming daily occurrences. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca, her college roommate and closest friend. "Stop moping. We're going out tonight." "No excuses," Olivia groaned and typed back. "Not in the mood, Becca." Within seconds, her phone rang. "Listen here, Carter." Rebecca's voice was firm but loving. "You've been sending out resumes and crying into ice cream for 3 months. You need a break. There's a networking mixer tonight at the Apex Lounge. Rich people, potential connections, free drinks. You're coming." "I can't afford to go to places like the Apex," Olivia protested. "It's a professional event. Free entry. Just wear that black dress I know you still have and meet me there at 8. And Liv, wash your hair, please." Olivia looked at her reflection in the dark laptop screen. Rebecca had a point. She looked terrible. 3 hours later, Olivia stood in front of the Apex Lounge, feeling completely out of place. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of establishment where she imagined people discussed million-dollar deals over cocktails she couldn't pronounce. Her black dress suddenly felt cheap and worn. "You look amazing." Rebecca appeared beside her, linking their arms together. "Now, stop looking like you're about to face a firing squad and come inside." The lounge was sophisticated and dimly lit with soft jazz playing in the background. Beautiful people in expensive clothes, mingled with champagne flutes, their laughter floating through the air like music. Olivia felt her anxiety spike. "I'll get us drinks," Rebecca announced and disappeared into the crowd before Olivia could object. Left alone, Olivia made her way to a quiet corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking, thousands of lights twinkling against the dark sky. "You're beautiful, isn't it?" The voice came from beside her, deep and smooth like aged whiskey. Olivia turned and her breath caught in her throat. The man standing there was possibly the most attractive person she had ever seen in real life. He was tall, with dark hair that looked artfully messy, strong jawline, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to glow in the dim lighting. His suit probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. "It is," she managed to say, grateful her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "Julian," he extended his hand with a smile that made her knees weak. "Olivia," she shook his hand, electricity shooting up her arm at the contact. "So, Olivia, what brings you here tonight, besides the view?" Something about the way he looked at her, like she was the only person in the room, made her honest. "My friend dragged me here, said I needed to stop wallowing in unemployment and start networking." "Unemployed?" He seemed surprised. "What field?" "Marketing. Recent graduate. Apparently having a degree in enthusiasm isn't enough anymore." She laughed bitterly. "Sorry, that was probably too much information for a stranger." "I like honesty," Julian said, his eyes never leaving hers. "And for what it's worth, any company would be lucky to have someone with your credentials." "You don't know my credentials," Olivia pointed out. "I know you're intelligent. Can tell by the way you speak. You're well educated based on your vocabulary. And you have integrity because you could have lied and said you were here for business, but you told the truth instead." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "That's very observant. I'm good at reading people." They talked for hours. Julian was funny and charming without being arrogant. He asked about her dreams and goals, listened intently when she spoke, and shared stories that made her laugh until her sides hurt. He never mentioned what he did for work, and she never asked, content to just enjoy the conversation. Rebecca appeared. Briefly saw Olivia engaged with Julian, gave an obvious thumbs up, and vanished again. "Your friend approves," Julian noted with amusement. "She's very invested in my social life," Olivia admitted, or lack thereof. "Well, I for one am grateful she dragged you here tonight." The way he looked at her when he said that made Olivia's heart race. There was intention behind those blue eyes, desire barely contained beneath the surface of polite conversation. "Dance with me," he said suddenly, extending his hand. "There's no dance floor," she pointed out. "There is now." He led her to an empty space near the windows and pulled her close. They swayed to the jazz music, bodies pressed together, the rest of the world fading away. Olivia's hands were on his shoulders, his hands on her waist, and the air between them crackled with tension. I want to kiss you, Julian murmured, his lips close to her ear. Then kiss me, she whispered back, surprised by her own boldness. The kiss was everything. Soft at first, then deeper, more urgent. His hands moved to her face, holding her like she was precious, like she might disappear. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Olivia knew she was in trouble. Come with me, Julian said. Not a question, but an invitation. She should have said no, should have been practical and cautious like always. But looking into his eyes, feeling the pull between them, she heard herself say yes. The taxi ride to his place was torture in the best way. Stolen kisses at red lights, his hand on her thigh, her fingers in his hair. By the time they reached his building, a stunning high-rise in the most expensive part of the city, Olivia was dizzy with want. His penthouse was enormous and elegantly furnished, but she barely noticed. The moment the door closed, they were on each other. Clothes scattered across the marble floor, hands exploring, lips tasting. Are you sure? Julian asked when they reached his bedroom, his forehead pressed against hers. Olivia had never been more sure of anything. Yes, that night was a revelation. Julian was attentive and passionate, gentle when she needed him to be, and commanding when she wanted him to be. He learned her body like he was studying for the most important test of his life, and when she cried out his name, he looked at her like she had given him the greatest gift. Afterward, wrapped in his arms in the massive bed, Olivia felt something she hadn't felt in months. Happy, content, like maybe everything was going to be okay. Stay, Julian whispered against her hair as her eyes grew heavy. Okay, she murmured, already half asleep. But when Olivia woke as dawn light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, panic set in. What had she done? She didn't even know this man's last name. This wasn't her. She didn't have one-night stands with strangers in penthouses. Moving. Carefully so as not to wake Julian, she gathered her clothes and dressed quickly. On the nightstand, she saw a notepad from some hotel. With trembling hands, she wrote a quick note. Thank you for an unforgettable night. Please don't look for me. She left it on the pillow beside him and slipped out of the penthouse, her heart breaking with every step. In the elevator, tears finally came. She had just experienced something magical and was walking away from it. Because girls like her didn't end up with men like him. That was just reality. The next 2 weeks were misery. Olivia tried to forget. Julian tried to focus on job hunting, tried to convince herself it was just one night and meant nothing. But her body remembered his touch. Her mind replayed his laugh, and her heart ached in a way she didn't understand. Then the email came. Dear Ms. Carter, we are pleased to invite you to interview for the executive assistant position at Sterling Media Group. Your qualifications have impressed our hiring team. Please confirm your availability for an interview this Friday at 2 p.m. Regards, Human Resources, Sterling Media Group. Olivia stared at the email in shock. Sterling Media Group was one of the biggest media conglomerates in the country. She didn't even remember applying there, but she must have in her desperate job-hunting frenzy. This was it. This was her chance. Friday arrived too quickly. Olivia dressed in her best interview outfit, a navy blue skirt suit that was professional but flattering. She practiced her answers on the subway ride downtown, trying to calm her nerves. The Sterling Media Group building was impressive, all gleaming glass and modern architecture. The lobby alone was bigger than her entire apartment. At the reception desk, a polished woman directed her to the executive floor. The CEO himself will be conducting your interview, the receptionist said, with what seemed like sympathy. Mr. Sterling doesn't usually do first interviews, but he personally requested to meet you, Mr. Sterling. The name tickled something in Olivia's memory, but she was too nervous to place it. An assistant named Patricia met her at the elevator and led her down a hallway lined with photos of the company's achievements. At the end of the hall were large double doors made of dark wood. Patricia knocked twice. Mr. Sterling, Ms. Carter is here for her interview. Send her in, came the reply from inside. That voice, Olivia's blood turned to ice. No, it couldn't be. Patricia opened the door and gestured for her to enter. On autopilot, Olivia walked into the office, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might explode. The office was massive with modern furniture and one entire wall of windows overlooking the city. Behind a large mahogany desk sat a man in an expensive suit, his attention on some papers in front of him. Then he looked up. Julian. Their eyes met and time stopped. Recognition flashed across his face, quickly followed by something else. Surprise, satisfaction, and underneath it all, heat. "Miss Carter?" he said slowly, a smile playing at his lips. What a pleasant surprise. Olivia couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The man she had spent one passionate night with, the man she had run away from, was Julian Sterling, billionaire, CEO, her potential boss. "I can explain," she started, her voice shaking. "Can you?" He stood up and walked around the desk, leaning against it casually. "Because I'm very curious to hear why you disappeared without a trace. I didn't know who you were. Would it have mattered?" "Yes, no, I don't know." She was rambling. "This is inappropriate. I should go. Sit down." "Miss Carter," his voice was commanding now, the voice of a man used to being obeyed. "We have an interview to conduct. You can't be serious." "I'm always serious about business." "Sit." With trembling legs, Olivia sat in the chair across from his desk. This was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. Julian returned to his seat, his expression unreadable. "Your resume is impressive. Top of your class, relevant internship experience, strong references. Tell me, why do you want to work at Sterling Media Group?" Was he really going to pretend nothing happened? Olivia took a shaky breath and tried to focus. "Your company is an industry leader with a reputation for innovation. I believe my skills would be valuable to your team, and the growth opportunities here are unmatched. Now tell me the real reason. That is the real reason." Olivia. The way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. "We're past pretending, don't you think?" Olivia's hands gripped the armrests of her chair as Julian watched her with those impossibly blue eyes. The same eyes that had looked at her with such tenderness 2 weeks ago now held a challenge. "The real reason," she said carefully, "is that I need a job. My rent is overdue, my savings are gone, and this opportunity could change my life. What happened between us was a mistake, Mr. Sterling, one I'd like to forget." Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe. But it was gone in an instant. "A mistake," he repeated. "Interesting. It didn't feel like a mistake when you were in my arms." "Mr. Sterling, please." "It's Julian. I think we're past formalities." Olivia stood up. "We're not. If you're going to hold that night over my head, then I don't want this job. I may be desperate, but I have my dignity." For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Julian's expression softened. "You're right. I apologize. That was unprofessional." He gestured to the chair. "Please, sit. Let me start over." Cautiously, Olivia sat back down. "Your qualifications are excellent, Olivia, truly. I need an executive assistant who is intelligent, organized, and can handle high-pressure situations. Someone who isn't intimidated easily and speaks their mind. From what I've seen, you're all of those things. You barely know me. I know enough. The job is yours if you want it. The salary is competitive. Benefits are comprehensive. And you'll gain experience that will open doors anywhere in the industry." It was everything she needed. Everything she had been praying for. But working for Julian every day, seeing him, remembering that night, could she do that? "What about what happened between us?" she asked quietly. "What about it? We're both adults. We shared one night before we knew we'd be working together. It doesn't have to define our professional relationship unless we let it." He made it sound so simple, so rational. "And if I accept, then you start Monday. Patricia will handle all the paperwork and orientation." He stood and extended his hand across the desk. "Do we have an agreement, Miss Carter?" Olivia looked at his outstretched hand. This was insane, but she needed this job. She could be professional. She could keep her distance. She shook his hand, ignoring the spark that shot through her. We have an agreement, Mr. Sterling. His smile was slow and devastating. Excellent. I look forward to working with you. Monday morning arrived too soon. Olivia dressed conservatively in a gray pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, minimal makeup. She wanted to look competent and unapproachable. Patricia showed her to her desk, positioned directly outside Julian's office. Of course, she would see him every time he entered or left. There was no way that was a coincidence. Mr. Sterling likes his coffee black at 9 and 3, Patricia explained. He has a morning meeting with the marketing team at 10, lunch with investors at noon, and conference calls all afternoon. His calendar is on the shared system. He expects you to stay on top of schedule changes and handle any conflicts. Understood, Olivia said, taking notes. One more thing, Patricia lowered her voice. Be careful around Vanessa Monroe, the director of business development. She and Mr. Sterling used to date, and she doesn't like attractive women around him. Olivia's stomach tightened. They dated. For about 6 months last year. She thought it was serious, but he ended things. She still acts like she has claim to him. Before Olivia could respond, Julian's office door opened. He looked impossibly handsome in a charcoal suit, his hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. When he saw Olivia, something flashed in his eyes. It's Carter, good morning. I need the Henderson files for the 10 o'clock meeting. Of course, Mr. Sterling. Olivia's voice was steady, professional. And Olivia? He paused at her desk. Welcome to Sterling Media Group. The first week was a test of endurance. Julian was demanding but fair, expecting excellence, but acknowledging good work. They maintained careful professionalism.
No.
Though Olivia caught him watching her sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking. Vanessa Monroe appeared on Wednesday. She was stunning with platinum blonde hair, designer clothes, and the confidence of someone who knew her worth. She swept past Olivia's desk without acknowledgement and entered Julian's office without knocking. Julian, darling, her voice carried through the partially open door. I heard you hired a new assistant. She looks very young. Olivia's qualified and capable, Julian replied coolly. I'm sure she is. Vanessa's tone dripped with condescension. Just be careful. Young, pretty assistants can be trouble. Remember what happened at Davidson Corp? Vanessa, was there something work-related you needed? There was a pause. We should have dinner. Catch up properly. I'm too busy right now. You're always too busy. But you have to eat, Julian. How about Friday? Olivia tried not to listen, but jealousy burned in her chest. She had no right to feel that way. Julian wasn't hers. I'll check my schedule, Julian said in a tone that clearly meant no. When Vanessa emerged, she stopped at Olivia's desk. So you're the new girl. How sweet. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Word of advice, honey? Don't get any ideas about Julian. He goes through assistants quickly, and office romances never end well. Especially for the assistant. I'm here to work, Ms. Monroe. Nothing more? Of course you are. Vanessa's laugh was cold. They all say that. The days blended together. Olivia proved herself capable, handling crises with calm efficiency, anticipating Julian's needs before he voiced them. He praised her work, always professionally. But there was tension simmering beneath every interaction. Late nights became common. The company was launching a major new platform, and everyone was working overtime. One Thursday evening, Olivia found herself alone in the office with Julian at 9 p.m., reviewing presentation slides. This section needs work, he said, leaning over her shoulder to point at the screen. His proximity made her pulse race. The data is solid, but the visual presentation is cluttered. I can simplify it, she said, too aware of his cologne, the heat of his body. Good. But he didn't move away. For a moment, they both froze, his face inches from hers. Julian, she whispered. I know. His voice was rough. I'm sorry. I just need a minute. He straightened and walked to the window, putting distance between them. This is harder than I thought it would be. What is? Being around you every day. Pretending that night didn't happen? Pretending I don't want to kiss you every time you walk into my office. Olivia's breath caught. We agreed to keep things professional. I know what we agreed. He turned to face her. But knowing what I should do and actually doing it are two different things. You haunt me, Olivia. Every night since you left, I've thought about you. Don't say that. Why not? It's the truth, because it makes this impossible. She stood up. Because I can't afford to lose this job. Because everyone already assumes the worst about me being young and female and working for you. If anything actually happened, it would destroy my credibility. You're right, he said after a moment. I apologize. It won't happen again. But the words hung in the air between them, changing everything. The following week, the company announced a business trip to San Francisco for the platform launch. Julian would attend, along with key staff members. As his assistant, Olivia had to go too. Separate hotel rooms, Julian said when discussing arrangements. Separate flights if you prefer. Same flight is fine, Olivia replied. We're professionals. Vanessa also attended the trip, making her displeasure known. How convenient that Julian's new assistant gets to go to San Francisco, she commented loudly in the office. Must be nice to have special privileges. Olivia ignored her, but the whispers were starting. Colleagues gave her looks. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. The rumor mill was churning, and Vanessa was feeding it. San Francisco was beautiful. The launch event was a success, and Julian's presentation was brilliant. At the celebration dinner, Olivia sat with the marketing team while Julian entertained investors. She watched him work the room, charming and confident, and felt a pang of longing. He's something, isn't he? One of the marketing managers, Christine, said, I've worked here 5 years and still get impressed by him. He's very good at what he does, Olivia agreed carefully. Vanessa thinks she'll get him back eventually. She's been telling everyone they're rekindling things. Olivia's heart sank. Are they? Who knows? Julian keeps his personal life private, but Vanessa is determined. Back at the hotel, Olivia couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Julian and Vanessa, about the impossibility of her situation. Around midnight, there was a knock on her door. Through the peephole, she saw Julian. She shouldn't open it. Should pretend she was asleep. But her hand moved to the lock of its own accord. What are you doing here? She whispered. I can't stop thinking about you, he said simply. I tried. God knows I tried. But seeing you tonight, watching you smile at other people, knowing you're so close but untouchable, it's driving me insane. Julian, we can't. I know all the reasons why we can't. But I need to know something. Do you feel it too? This pull between us? Olivia wanted to lie. Should lie. But looking into his eyes, she couldn't. Yes, I feel it. Yeah, let me in, please. Just for tonight, let's stop fighting this. It was a terrible idea. Career suicide. Everything she feared. But when he looked at her like that, none of it mattered. She stepped aside. He entered her room. This time was different from their first night. Slower, more intense. They took their time exploring each other, memorizing every touch, every sound. When they finally came together, it felt like coming home. Afterward, lying in the tangled sheets, Julian held her close. I don't want to hide this anymore. We have to, Olivia said against his chest. You know we do. Why? Because people will talk? Let them talk. It's easy for you to say. You're the CEO. Your reputation is secure. But me. I'll be the assistant who slept her way to the top. Everything I've worked for will be dismissed. I won't let that happen. You can't control what people think. He was quiet for a long moment. So what do? We go back to New York and pretend this didn't happen. Again. I don't think I can do that. You have to, she said, though her heart was breaking. We both do. But as the night wore on, and they met, the return to New York was awkward. On the flight, they sat in different rows, maintaining professional distance. But the air between them was charged with everything left unsaid. Back at the office, they tried to resume their careful dance. But something had shifted. The looks lasted longer. The accidental touches felt deliberate, and everyone noticed. Vanessa especially noticed. She started watching Olivia like a hawk, looking for any sign of impropriety. She questioned every decision Julian made regarding Olivia's responsibilities, every project she was assigned. Why is your assistant handling the Morrison account? Vanessa demanded in a meeting. That's usually reserved for senior staff, 'cause she's capable, Julian replied tersely. and she has fresh ideas. Any other questions? The tension in the room was palpable. After the meeting, Christine pulled Olivia aside. Be careful. Vanessa's out for blood. I haven't done anything wrong. Doesn't matter. She's convinced something's going on between you and Julian. And honestly, Liv, the way he looks at you, she might not be wrong. Olivia's stomach churned. There's nothing going on. Maybe not. But the chemistry is obvious to everyone. That night, working late again, Julian called Olivia into his office. The moment she closed the door, he pulled her into his arms. We need to talk about this, he said. There's nothing to talk about, Olivia. I'm falling in love with you. The words hit her like a physical blow. Don't. Too late. I've been falling since that first night. Maybe before that, from the moment you told the truth about why you were at that lounge. Tears filled her eyes. This can't work, Julian. You know it can't? Why not? Because of what people will say? Because of Vanessa's jealousy? Those aren't good enough reasons. They're the only reasons that matter. I worked too hard to get here. I won't have my accomplishments diminished because people think I slept my way to success. Then I'll make you a senior executive. Give you real responsibilities that no one can question. That would only make it worse. Can't you see that? Any promotion, any recognition will be attributed to our relationship. I'll never be taken seriously. Julian's jaw clenched. So what? We just ignore this? Pretend we don't care about each other? Yes, she said, though the word tasted like ash. That's exactly what we do, but ignoring it became impossible. Stolen moments in empty conference rooms, kisses in the parking garage, text messages that were far from professional. They were playing with fire, and Vanessa was watching. 2 weeks before the annual company gala, Vanessa made her move. She cornered Olivia in the ladies' room, her expression triumphant. I know about you and Julian, she said. Olivia's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about, please. I followed you to the parking garage last week. I have photos. She pulled out her phone, showing images of Julian kissing Olivia by his car. Quality could be better, but they're clear enough. What do you want? I want you gone. Quit, and I'll delete these. Stay, and I'll make sure everyone sees them at the gala. Your choice. Olivia felt sick. You're blackmailing me? I'm protecting Julian from a gold digger. He doesn't see what you really are, but I do. You're using him for his money and connections. That's not true. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what people believe. And when they see these photos, when I tell them how you seduced the boss, how you manipulated your way into this job, they'll believe me. Because that's what people expect from girls like you. Girls like me? Young, pretty, ambitious. You're a cliché, honey. And clichés are easy to destroy. Vanessa left, and Olivia collapsed against the sink, shaking. She had to tell Julian. But what could he do? Fire Vanessa? That would only confirm the rumors. Take out a public statement? That would make things worse. For the next 2 weeks, Olivia lived in dread. She considered quitting, but couldn't bring herself to do it. She had done nothing wrong. Why should she run? The night of the gala arrived. Olivia wore a midnight blue gown that made her feel beautiful and terrified all at once. She arrived early to help with last-minute arrangements, avoiding Julian as much as possible. The ballroom was elegant, with crystal chandeliers and hundreds of guests in formal attire. Julian gave his annual speech, commanding and charismatic. Olivia watched from the back, her heart aching. At 10 p.m., Vanessa made her move. She clinked her glass for attention, the sound cutting through conversations. Excuse me, everyone. Her voice rang out. I have an announcement. Julian's eyes found Olivia's across the room. He looked confused. I think you all deserve to know the truth about our esteemed CEO and his new assistant. Vanessa's smile was vicious. You see, Ms. Carter here didn't get her job through traditional means. She seduced Julian Sterling before she ever applied, and he rewarded her with a position she isn't qualified for. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Olivia felt hundreds of eyes turn to her. That's not true, she said, but her voice was too quiet, isn't it? Then explain these. Vanessa projected the parking garage photos on the large screens around the room. Julian and Olivia, clearly kissing. The room erupted in whispers. Olivia's vision blurred with tears. "Vanessa, that's enough." Julian's voice cut through the chaos, cold and furious. "The truth hurts, doesn't it, Julian? She played you, got you into bed, then conveniently showed up for an interview. How calculated. You have no idea what you're talking about, don't I? Everyone here is thinking the same thing. She's a gold digger who used her body to get ahead. It's pathetic, really." Olivia couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This was her worst nightmare playing out in front of everyone. Without another word, she pushed through the crowd and ran. She heard Julian calling her name but didn't stop. In the lobby, she kicked off her heels and kept running, tears streaming down her face. At home, she locked herself in her apartment and sobbed. Her phone exploded with messages from Julian, from Christine, from Rebecca, who had heard about the disaster through social media. Through her tears, she typed out an email. "Dear Mr. Sterling, I resign effective immediately. I'm sorry for any embarrassment I've caused you and the company. Sincerely, Olivia Carter." She hit send and turned off her phone. The next few days were a blur. Olivia ignored all calls and messages. She ate nothing, slept fitfully, and tried to figure out how to rebuild a life that felt shattered. Rebecca finally showed up with a key. Olivia had given her years ago. "All right, that's enough wallowing. Get in the shower, Rebecca." "I can't." "Can't. You can and you will. That viper Vanessa doesn't get to win. You did nothing wrong. Liv, you fell for a guy. That's not a crime. I slept with my boss. You slept with a man before he was your boss. Big difference. Now shower, because we're going out." "I'm not going anywhere." "Fine, then I'm staying here until you rot. Your choice." Reluctantly, Olivia showered and dressed. Rebecca forced food down her throat and wouldn't let her retreat back into depression. "You're Olivia Carter," Rebecca said firmly. "The girl who graduated top of her class, who survived her dad walking out, who put herself through college. You're a fighter, and you don't give up because one mean woman told lies. Everyone believes her, so prove them wrong. Find another job. Show them your skills weren't about Julian Sterling." Took another week, but Olivia finally updated her resume. She applied to smaller companies, places where the Sterling scandal wouldn't matter as much. A marketing firm called Horizon Creative responded within days. The interview went well. The hiring manager, a kind woman named Stephanie, was impressed by her skills. "I'll be honest," Stephanie said. "I heard about what happened at Sterling Media, but I also did my research. Your academic record is impeccable. Your references from before Sterling are glowing, and your work samples are excellent. I believe you earned your position there regardless of any personal relationship. The job is yours if you want it." The salary was half what Sterling paid, but Olivia didn't care. It was a fresh start. "I want it, thank you." She started the following Monday. Horizon Creative was smaller, less prestigious, but the people were genuinely nice. No office politics, no backstabbing, just good work and mutual respect. Olivia threw herself into her new role, determined to prove she was more than scandal. She worked hard, pitched innovative ideas, and slowly began to feel like herself again. But she missed Julian with an ache that wouldn't fade. Every night she wondered what he was doing, if he thought about her. If he hated her for running. 2 weeks into her new job, Rebecca texted her, "Turn on Channel 7 News, now." Confused, Olivia turned on the small TV in the break room. There on the screen was Julian, standing outside Sterling Media Group with reporters surrounding him. "Mr. Sterling, is it true you fired Vanessa Monroe?" "Yes, Ms. Monroe engaged in workplace harassment and defamation. Legal action is being taken." "What about the allegations regarding you and Olivia Carter?" Julian looked directly into the camera. Ms. Carter was and is an exceptional professional who earned her position through merit. Any insinuation otherwise is false and slanderous. The personal relationship that developed between us happened after her hire and was mutual and consensual. She is one of the most talented individuals I've ever worked with, and I deeply regret that my company's toxic environment drove her away. Olivia's hands shook. "Are you currently in a relationship with Miss Carter?" "That's between me and Olivia. But I will say this. She is remarkable, intelligent, principled. and deserves to be judged on her abilities, not on who she cares about. I hope she's watching this, because I need her to know that I'm sorry. Sorry I couldn't protect her better. Sorry I put her in that position. And sorry I let her leave thinking any of this was her fault. Tears streamed down Olivia's face. Mr. Sterling, some are saying this is just damage control. Let them say what they want. I know the truth. Olivia knows the truth. It's all that matters. He turned and walked back into the building, ignoring the shouted questions. Olivia's phone rang. Julian, she stared at it, hand trembling, and answered. Did you see? His voice was rough. I saw. I meant every word. You're brilliant, Olivia. You always were. Anyone who can't see that is blind. Julian, I don't know what to say. Say you'll see me. Let me apologize properly. Let me tell you everything I should have said before. I'm at work, then after work. I'll wait all night if I have to. Please, Olivia. They met at a quiet coffee shop far from both their offices. Julian looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and rumpled clothes. He stood when she entered, and for a moment they just stared at each other. You look good, he said finally. You look terrible, she replied honestly. He laughed, a broken sound. Haven't been sleeping well. Turns out the woman I love walked out of my life and I can't function properly. Julian, let me finish. I handled everything wrong. I should have gone public with our relationship from the start. Should have protected you better. Should have fired Vanessa the first time she was inappropriate. I thought I could manage it all, but I failed. I failed you. It wasn't just your responsibility. It was, though. I'm the one with power in that situation. Should have used it better. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I love you, Olivia. Not because you're convenient, or because we have chemistry, though God knows we have that. I love you because you're courageous and honest, and you make me want to be a better man. And I know I have no right to ask, but I'm asking anyway. Give me another chance. Olivia looked at their joined hands. People will still talk. Let them. My new boss might not like me dating the CEO of Sterling Media, then quit and come work somewhere else. Or don't work at all. Or start your own company and I'll be your first investor. I don't care, Olivia. I just want you in my life. You'd really give up your reputation for me? In a heartbeat? Because reputation doesn't keep me warm at night. Success doesn't make me laugh. Money doesn't make me feel alive the way you do. His grip tightened on her hand. I love you. And I'm not giving up on us unless you tell me there's absolutely no hope. Olivia thought about the past months, the fear, the pain, the scandal. But she also thought about the laughter, the passion, the way Julian looked at her like she was his whole world. There's hope, she whispered. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. Yeah, but we're doing this differently. No secrets, no hiding. If we're together for real. Absolutely. I'll shout it from the rooftops if you want. Maybe not that dramatic, she laughed, but honest. Open. No matter what people say. Deal. He stood and pulled her up into his arms. Can I kiss you now? I've been dying to kiss you for weeks. You better. Relief and joy and promise all wrapped up in one perfect moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. So what now? Olivia asked. Now I take you to dinner. Then maybe a walk. And I spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how much I love you. That's a pretty ambitious plan. I'm an ambitious guy. You should know that by now. They left the coffee shop hand in hand, facing whatever would come together. 6 months later, Olivia sat in her new office at Sterling Media Group, not as Julian's assistant, but as Director of Marketing Innovation, a position she had earned through a competitive application process overseen by an independent hiring committee. The whispers had eventually died down. Her work spoke for itself. She launched 3 successful campaigns that brought major clients to Sterling. Industry publications featured her insights. Slowly, people stopped seeing her as Julian Sterling's girlfriend and started seeing her as Olivia Carter, marketing genius. Julian knocked on her doorframe. Ready for lunch? Always, she smiled, grabbing her purse. They walked through the office together, no longer hiding. Some people still gossiped, but most had moved on to other scandals. In the elevator, Julian pulled her close. Happy? Very, Olivia said, meaning it completely. You, never been happier. He kissed her forehead. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for not giving up on us. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and they walked out into the sunshine, two people who had fought for their love and won. Because sometimes the best things in life are worth fighting for. And sometimes, just sometimes, the fairy tale ending is real. Alina Carter stared at the coffee stains spreading across the marble floor of the executive suite. Her heart sinking as she realized it had splattered onto the hem of her boss's custom Italian suit pants. Adrian Blackwell stood frozen, his phone pressed to his ear, looking down at the damage with an expression Alina could not quite read. I'll call you back, Adrian said into the phone, his voice oddly calm. He ended the call and looked at Alina, who was already grabbing napkins from his desk. Mr. Blackwell, I am so sorry, Alina stammered, dropping to her knees to blot the coffee. I tripped over the carpet edge. I'll pay for the dry cleaning, or replacement, or whatever you need. Alina, stop, Adrian said, and something in his tone made her look up. He was not angry. Instead, he looked tired, almost defeated, which was unusual for the man Forbes had just named one of the most innovative tech entrepreneurs under 40. It's just a suit. I have 17 others exactly like it. Lena stood, still clutching the coffee-soaked napkins. In 3 years of working as Adrian's executive assistant, she had learned to read his moods better than anyone else at Blackwell Technologies. Right now, beneath the expensive suit and commanding presence, her boss looked like a man carrying the weight of something far heavier than quarterly earnings reports. Is everything okay? She asked, forgetting for a moment the professional boundary she usually maintained. Adrian walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle, his hands shoved into his pockets. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across his office, highlighting the tension in his shoulders. My father is turning 60 next Saturday, he said finally. There's a gala at the estate. 500 guests, press coverage, the whole theatrical production my family excels at creating. Alina had heard about Harrison Blackwell's legendary parties. The man had built a real estate empire worth billions, and he believed in showing it off at every opportunity. That sounds like quite an event, Alina offered, unsure where this conversation was heading. Except my father has decided this is the perfect opportunity to officially announce my engagement to Vanessa Sterling. Alina felt her stomach drop, though she could not explain why. She knew Vanessa Sterling by reputation. The woman was a socialite, philanthropist, and heiress to the Sterling Hotel fortune. She was also stunningly beautiful, impeccably connected, and had been photographed with Adrian at various charity events over the past year. I didn't realize you were engaged, Alina said carefully. Congratulations. Adrian turned to face her, and there was something almost desperate in his expression. I'm not engaged. Vanessa and I went on 3 dates, all arranged by our parents. And I made it clear I wasn't interested in pursuing anything serious. But she's convinced our families should merge their empires, and my father agrees. He's been pressuring me for months. Can't you just tell them no? I have. Repeatedly. But my father is a man who sees what he wants to see. And Vanessa is a woman who doesn't accept rejection easily. If I show up alone to this gala, they'll parade her around as my date. And every newspaper in the city will run engagement speculation stories by morning. Lena shifted uncomfortably, still not understanding why Adrian was confiding all this to her. So what are you going to do? Adrian took a deep breath, and Alina recognized the look on his face. It was the same expression he wore before presenting a risky business proposal to the board. I need you to be my girlfriend for the evening, he said. Alina blinked. I'm sorry, what? Fake girlfriend, to be precise. Just for one night. If I show up with someone I'm clearly involved with, it sends a message to both Vanessa and my father that I'm not available. Mr. Blackwell, I don't think that's appropriate. I work for you. Which is exactly why you're perfect for this, Adrian said, moving closer. You know me better than anyone else in my life. You can anticipate what I'm going to say before I say it. We already have natural chemistry in a professional sense. It wouldn't take much to make it appear romantic. Elena's mind was racing. This was insane, inappropriate. completely outside the bounds of their working relationship. And yet, a small part of her, the part she usually kept locked away during business hours, was intrigued. "Why me?" she asked. You could call any of dozens of women who would jump at the chance to be seen as Adrian Blackwell's girlfriend, even for a night. "Because I trust you," Adrian said simply. "Because you're honest and smart, and you won't get the wrong idea about what this is. And because I'm willing to pay you $10,000 for approximately 6 hours of your time." Alina's breath caught. $10,000. That was almost 3 months of her salary, and more importantly, it was exactly what she still needed for her sister's medical expenses. Jenna had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder 6 months ago, and even with insurance, the experimental treatment she needed was devastatingly expensive. $10,000 to pretend to be your girlfriend for one evening, Alina repeated slowly. Plus a shopping budget for whatever you need to wear to the event. Call it 2004 clothes, shoes, hair, makeup, whatever makes you feel confident. Alina bit her lip, her practical side warring with her sense of professional ethics. "This is crazy, completely insane," Adrian agreed. "But will you do it?" She thought about Jenna, about the mounting medical bills, about the scared look in her little sister's eyes during their last hospital visit. She thought about how Adrian had been a good boss, demanding but fair, and how he was looking at her now with something close to desperation. "I have conditions," Alina said finally. Relief flooded Adrian's face. "Name them." "First, this is strictly professional. One night, nothing more, nothing less. Afterward, we never mention it again, and our working relationship remains exactly as it is." "Agreed." "Second, you brief me completely on your family, friends, and anyone else who will be at this gala. I need to know enough to be convincing. I'll give you a full dossier." "Third, we practice." "If we're going to make this believable, we need to look comfortable together. That means rehearsing how we interact, what our story is, all of it." Adrian smiled, and Alina realized it was the first genuine smile she had seen from him in weeks. "So you're saying yes?" Alina took a deep breath, knowing she was crossing a line she could never uncross. "Yes, I'll be your fake girlfriend, but only for that one night." "Thank you, Alina," Adrian said. And the gratitude in his voice was so sincere that Alina felt a flutter of something she definitely should not be feeling for her boss. "I promise I'll make this as painless as possible." As Alina left his office to clean up the coffee disaster, she wondered if she had just made the best decision of her life, or the worst. What she did not know was that by agreeing to one night of pretending, she had set in motion a chain of events that would change everything she thought she knew about Adrian Blackwell, about herself, and about the fine line between performance and reality. The following morning, Alina arrived at the office to find an envelope on her desk. Inside was a black credit card with her name embossed on it and a note in Adrian's distinctive handwriting for shopping. "Don't hold back. You need to look like someone I would actually date." Alina smiled despite herself, tucking the card into her wallet. She had agreed to play a part, and she was going to play it perfectly. What she had not anticipated was how quickly the lines between acting and authenticity would begin to blur, or how one night of pretending could reveal truths that both she and Adrian had been hiding from themselves for far longer than either wanted to admit. The week leading up to the gala passed in a blur of preparation that felt both surreal and strangely intimate. Adrian had been true to his word, providing Alina with detailed information about every important person who would be attending his father's birthday celebration. They spent their lunch breaks reviewing names, relationships, and the intricate web of business connections that defined the Blackwell social circle. But it was the evenings that changed everything. On Tuesday, Adrian had insisted they practice at his penthouse apartment rather than the office, claiming they needed a more relaxed environment to seem natural together. Alina had entered the sleek, modern space with her notepad and professional demeanor firmly in place, only to find Adrian waiting with takeout containers and a nervousness she had never seen in him before. "Lesson 1, he had said, gesturing to the couch. "We need to be comfortable in each other's personal space." They had spent 2 hours simply sitting close, talking about things that had nothing to do with Blackwell Technologies. Alina learned that Adrian played piano, but only when he thought no one could hear him. That he had wanted to be an architect before his father pushed him into the family business. That he donated anonymously to 3 different children's hospitals because his younger brother had died of leukemia when Adrian was 12. By Thursday, they were holding hands without thinking about it, and Adrian could rest his arm around Elena's shoulders in a way that looked completely natural. On Friday evening, they practiced dancing in his living room, moving together to soft music while rain drummed against the windows. When the song ended, they had stood there, swaying slightly. Adrian's hand warm on the small of Elena's back, both of them pretending not to notice how perfectly they fit together. "You're a good dancer," Elena had whispered, suddenly aware of how close his face was to hers. "You're easy to lead," Adrian had replied, his voice rough. For a moment, Elena thought he might kiss her. Really kiss her, but then he had stepped back and suggested they call it a night. Now, standing in her bedroom on Saturday evening, Elena barely recognized her reflection. The dress she had chosen was midnight blue silk that hugged her curves before flowing into an elegant skirt. Her dark hair was swept up in a sophisticated style. The makeup artist Adrian had sent over had transformed her features into something glamorous yet natural. She looked like someone who belonged in Adrian Blackwell's world. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Adrian stood in her doorway wearing a tailored black tuxedo. The expression on his face when he saw her made Elena's heart skip several beats. "Elena," he breathed. "You look stunning. Clean up pretty well yourself," she managed. Trying to ignore the warmth spreading through her chest, the drive to the Blackwell estate took 40 minutes. Winding through increasingly expensive neighborhoods until they passed through massive iron gates into what could only be described as a private kingdom. The house itself was a sprawling mansion lit by thousands of lights, with valets, parking cars, and guests in evening wear streaming through the entrance. "Ready?" Adrian asked, taking her hand as the valet opened her door. Elena squeezed his fingers. "As I'll ever be." The moment they entered the grand ballroom, Elena understood why Adrian had been so anxious. The space was filled with the kind of wealth and power that most people only saw in movies. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, a full orchestra played on a raised platform, and waiters circulated with champagne and caviar. Every person in attendance looked like they belonged on the cover of a magazine. "Ah, Adrian!" A woman's voice cut through the crowd. Elena turned to see an elegant woman in her late 50s approaching. Her silver hair perfectly styled, her smile warm, but her eyes sharp and assessing. "There you are. We've been waiting," Mother Adrian said, and Elena heard genuine affection in his voice. "This is Elena Carter." "Elena, my mother, Grace Blackwell?" Grace extended her hand and Elena shook it, feeling the weight of the older woman's scrutiny. "Elena, Adrian has mentioned you numerous times over the years. It's lovely to finally meet you properly." "The pleasure's mine." "Mrs. Blackwell," Elena said, grateful that her voice came out steady.
"Please."
"Call me Grace. Any woman who can keep my son organized and relatively sane deserves to be on a first-name basis." Grace's smile widened. "Though I must admit, I'm surprised. Adrian has always been so careful about keeping his personal and professional lives separate. Sometimes the best relationships develop from friendship and mutual respect," Adrian said smoothly, his hand moving to the small of Elena's back in a gesture that looked completely natural after their week of practice. Before Grace could respond, a booming voice interrupted. "There's my son." Harrison Blackwell was an imposing man, tall and broad-shouldered despite his age, with silver hair and the kind of commanding presence that made everyone in his vicinity instinctively pay attention. He approached with a beautiful blonde woman on his arm, and Elena's stomach tightened when she recognized Vanessa Sterling from the Society page photographs. "Adrian," Harrison said, embracing his son briefly before turning his attention to Elena. "And who is this?" "Father, this is Elena Carter, my girlfriend." "Elena, my father, Harrison Blackwell." Harrison's eyebrows rose slightly. "Your girlfriend? Well, this is unexpected." He shook Elena's hand, his grip firm and evaluating. "What do you do, Elena?" "I work in executive management," Elena replied, using the description Adrian had suggested. It was technically true, even if it glossed over the fact that she was Adrian's assistant. "How did you two meet?" Vanessa interjected, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes cold. She was even more beautiful in person, with perfect features and a designer dress that probably cost more than Elena's car. At work, Adrian said easily, Elena has been with Blackwell Technologies for 3 years. We became friends first, and over the past several months we realized it was something more. How convenient, Vanessa said, her smile never wavering. And romantic, I suppose, though mixing business with pleasure can be so complicated. Not when you find the right person, Elena said, surprising herself with her boldness. She looked up at Adrian, and the smile he gave her in return made her forget for a moment that they were acting. The evening continued in a whirlwind of introductions. Elena met Adrian's younger sister Charlotte, a whip-smart college student who whispered, "Thank God you're not Vanessa," before hugging Elena enthusiastically. She shook hands with business partners, smiled through conversations about yachts and summer homes in the Hamptons, and gradually began to relax into her role. Adrian was attentive without being overbearing, bringing her champagne, introducing her with pride in his voice, keeping his hand on her back or their fingers intertwined in a way that felt increasingly natural. Several times Elena caught herself forgetting that this was all pretend, that come Monday morning they would return to being boss and assistant, that the way Adrian looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention was just part of the performance. As the orchestra began playing a waltz, Adrian led her onto the dance floor. They moved together easily, the result of their practice sessions, and Elena found herself resting her head against his shoulder, breathing in his cologne, feeling the solid warmth of him against her. "You're incredible," Adrian murmured into her hair. "Everyone believes it completely. Even my father seems impressed." "That's good," Elena whispered back, trying to ignore the disappointment that fluttered through her. Of course, he was pleased that their act was convincing. That was the entire point, Adrian said, pulling back slightly to look at her face. "I need to tell you something." But before he could continue, Vanessa appeared beside them, her smile sharp. "May I cut in? I'd love to have a dance with Adrian for old time's sake." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Actually, Vanessa, I'd prefer to stay with Elena." "Just one dance," Vanessa insisted, already positioning herself between them. "Surely your girlfriend won't mind sharing you for a few minutes." Elena, not wanting to cause a scene, stepped back. "Of course not. I'll get some air." She slipped away before Adrian could protest, needing a moment to collect herself. The performance was wearing on her, making her wish for things that were never part of their agreement. She found a side door that led to an expansive garden. Lit by lanterns and blessedly quiet compared to the ballroom, Elena walked along a stone path, her heels clicking softly until she reached a fountain surrounded by rose bushes. She sat on the marble edge, looking up at the stars and trying to remember why she had agreed to this charade in the first place. The money, yes, but somewhere over the past week, it had stopped being about the money and started being about the dangerous hope that maybe Adrian saw her as more than just his efficient assistant.
So you're the poor girl who thinks?
She can land Adrian Blackwell. Lena spun to find Vanessa standing behind her, the sweetness completely gone from her voice. In the dim light of the garden, the socialite looked predatory. "Excuse me," Elena said, standing up. "Please, did you really think I wouldn't do my research?" Vanessa pulled out her phone, scrolling through something before turning the screen to face Elena. Elena Carter. Age 27. College dropout. Currently earning $48,000 a year as an executive assistant. Your sister has been in and out of hospitals for 6 months, with medical bills totaling over $100,000. Your mother died when you were 16. Your father works construction in Portland, and you've been living paycheck to paycheck your entire adult life. Lena felt the blood drain from her face. "How did you money can buy a lot of information, sweetie? And what it tells me is that you're a gold digger who saw an opportunity and jumped at it. How much is he paying you to pretend to be his girlfriend? Or are you holding out for something more permanent?" "You don't know anything about me or my relationship with Adrian," Elena said, her voice shaking with anger and humiliation. "I know that you don't belong in this world. I know that Harrison Blackwell would never accept someone like you as a daughter-in-law. And I know that whatever little arrangement you have with Adrian will end the moment I walk back into that ballroom and share what I've learned with his father." Vanessa stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Adrian Blackwell is going to marry me. Our families have been planning it for years. You're just a temporary distraction, a charity case he'll forget about the moment someone better comes along. So do yourself a favor and walk away now before you get hurt. Trust me, girls, like you always get hurt when they try to play in our world. Alina felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Without another word, she turned and walked quickly back toward the mansion, her only thought to find her coat and call a cab. She could not do this anymore, could not pretend that she was someone she was not, could not keep acting like she belonged in a world where people like Vanessa Sterling could destroy her with a few phone calls. She was halfway across the ballroom when she heard Adrian's voice. Lena, wait. But she did not stop, could not stop, even as she felt everyone's eyes on her, even as she heard the whispers starting to spread through the crowd. She just needed to get out, to breathe, to stop pretending that Cinderella stories happened to girls like her. She had almost reached the entrance when Adrian caught her arm, spinning her around to face him. Alina, what happened? What did Vanessa say to you? Let me go, Adrian, Alina said, her voice breaking. This was a mistake. All of it. Tell me what she said. The truth, Alina whispered. She said the truth. That I don't belong here. That your father would never accept me. That I'm just a charity case you'll forget about. And she's right. So thank you for the money, but I can't do this anymore. Adrian's expression hardened into something Alina had never seen before. Stay here, he said. Please, just give me 2 minutes. Before Alina could respond, Adrian turned and strode back into the ballroom. Alina watched, frozen, as he climbed onto the small stage where the orchestra had been playing. Taking the microphone from the surprised conductor, "Excuse me, everyone," Adrian's voice boomed through the speakers, silencing the crowd. "I need to say something." Harrison Blackwell stepped forward, looking alarmed. "Son, this isn't the time, actually. Father, it's the perfect time. I've been letting you and everyone else in this room control my life for too long, and it ends tonight." The entire ballroom had gone silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on Adrian. Alina stood paralyzed in the doorway, unable to move, unable to process what was happening. "I brought Alina here tonight because I wanted to introduce you all to the woman I'm in love with," Adrian continued, his eyes finding Alina across the crowd. "Not someone I'm fake dating, not someone I'm pretending to care about to avoid an arrangement I never wanted. The woman I'm actually genuinely in love with." Lena's heart stopped beating. Lena Carter is the smartest, kindest, most genuine person I've ever known. She works as my executive assistant, yes, and I don't care who knows it or who thinks that's inappropriate. For 3 years, she's been the first person I want to talk to in the morning and the last person I think about at night. She makes me laugh. She challenges me. She sees through all the corporate nonsense to who I really am. And somewhere along the way, I fell completely in love with her. Tears were streaming down Elena's face now, and she could not tell if they were from shock, joy, or terror. "So too Vanessa Sterling," Adrian said, looking directly at the blonde woman who stood frozen in the crowd. "Thank you for showing your true colors tonight. And to my father, I love you, but if you can't accept Alina, then you can't accept me, because I'm not walking away from her. Not now, not ever." Adrian set down the microphone and walked through the silent crowd toward Alina. When he reached her, he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have told you sooner. This stopped being fake for me days ago. Maybe it was never really fake at all." Alina breathed, her hands coming up to grip his jacket. "This is crazy, I know, but it's also true. So please, Alina Carter, will you stop being my fake girlfriend and consider being my real one?" Alina laughed through her tears, and then she kissed him, really kissed him, in front of his entire world. The ballroom erupted in applause, though whether it was approval or shock, Alina no longer cared. All that mattered was Adrian, solid and real, and choosing her. When they finally broke apart, Harrison Blackwell was standing beside them, his expression unreadable. "Well," he said finally, "that was quite a speech, son." "I meant every word," Adrian said firmly. Harrison studied them both for a long moment, then surprised everyone by smiling. Good. Grace has been telling me for years that I push you too hard, try to control too much. And that young lady, he nodded at Alina, stood up to me earlier tonight in a way most people are too afraid to try. I respect that. He extended his hand to Alina. Welcome to the family. Ms. Carter, I suspect you're exactly what my son needs. Alina shook his hand. Still dazed, Grace appeared and hugged her warmly. Thank God, Adrian's mother whispered in her ear. I was so worried he'd end up with that horrible Sterling girl. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations, curious questions, and sideways glances. But Alina did not care about any of it because Adrian never left her side. Holding her hand like he was afraid she might disappear if he let go, as the party wound down and they finally escaped to Adrian's car, Alina turned to him in the darkness. Was any of that planned? She asked. The part where I fell in love with you. No. The part where I realized I couldn't keep pretending it was just business. That happened somewhere around our third practice session when you fell asleep on my couch and I spent an hour just watching you breathe. Alina smiled. You're not the boss I thought you were. And you're so much more than an assistant. You always have been. They drove back to the city in comfortable silence, hands intertwined. Both of them knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The fake date had become real. The performance had revealed the truth. And somewhere between a coffee-stained suit and a ballroom confession, they had stumbled into something that felt an awful lot like fate. The morning after the gala, Alina woke up in her own apartment with the strange sensation that the previous night had been an elaborate dream. But when she checked her phone, she found 47 text messages, including 3 from Adrian, 5 from her best friend who had seen clips of Adrian's speech already circulating on social media, and 1 from her sister Jenna that simply read, "Call me right now." Alina was still staring at her phone when her doorbell rang. She opened it to find Adrian standing there with coffee and pastries, still wearing his tuxedo pants and a wrinkled dress shirt, looking like he had not slept at all. "Hi," he said, suddenly looking uncertain in a way that made Alina's heart ache. "Can I come in?" Alina stepped aside and Adrian entered her small apartment, setting the coffee and pastries on her kitchen counter. They stood there for a moment in awkward silence. The easy intimacy of the previous night replaced by the weight of everything that had been said in front of 500 witnesses. Adrian Alina began, but he interrupted her. "Before you say anything, I need you to know that everything I said last night was true. I didn't plan it, and I probably should have told you privately first. But when I saw you leaving, when I realized Vanessa had hurt you, I just couldn't let you think that any of this was fake anymore." "How long?" Alina asked quietly. "How long have you known?" Adrian ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Alina had learned meant he was struggling with something difficult. "Honestly, I think part of me has known for a long time, maybe even years. But I convinced myself it was inappropriate, that I was your boss, and crossing that line would be wrong. It wasn't until I asked you to fake date me that I had to face the truth." He moved closer, his eyes searching hers. "That first practice session, when we were just sitting on my couch talking, I realized I had been lying to myself. I don't just respect you as an employee, Alina. I'm in love with you. With your laugh, your intelligence, the way you call me out when I'm being ridiculous, the way you make everything in my life better just by being in it." Alina felt tears threatening again. "I thought I was going crazy. All week, every time we practiced, every time you touched me or looked at me a certain way, I kept telling myself it was just acting, that you were a good performer and I was reading too much into it." "It was never acting for me," Adrian said softly. "Every touch, every look, every moment was real. I was just too afraid to admit it." "What happens now?" Alina whispered. "You're still my boss. Your father may have been gracious last night, but the board, the company, there are rules about relationships between supervisors and employees." Adrian smiled. "About that. I spent most of the night on the phone with our legal team and HR department. As of Monday morning, you're being promoted to Director of Strategic Operations, reporting directly to the coup instead of me. Same floor, different chain of command, substantial raise, and absolutely no ethical violations." Lena's eyes widened. You can't just create a position for me because we're dating.
Dad.
That position has been vacant for 6 months because we couldn't find anyone qualified enough. You've been doing half those duties already without the title or compensation. I should have promoted you a year ago, but I was too selfish to risk losing you as my assistant. He took her hands in his. This isn't charity, Elena. You've earned this 10 times over. Adrian, I don't know what to say. I say you'll give us a real chance. No fake dating, no pretending, just us figuring this out together. Elena looked up at the man who had somehow become her best friend without her realizing it. The man who had defended her in front of his entire world. The man who was looking at her like she was the most precious thing he had ever seen. Yes, she said simply. Yes to all of it. Adrian pulled her into his arms, and they stood there in her tiny kitchen, holding each other as morning light streamed through the windows. When they finally pulled apart, Adrian's expression turned serious. There's something else I need to tell you, and I need you to not be angry. Elena's stomach dropped. What? Your sister's surgery? The experimental treatment she needed. What about it? Adrian took a deep breath. I paid for it. 3 weeks ago, the hospital called it an anonymous donation, but it was me. Elena stepped back, her mind reeling. You what? I overheard you on the phone with the hospital, talking about payment plans and trying to figure out how to cover the costs. I couldn't stand the thought of you worrying about money when I had more than enough to help. So I made some calls and took care of it. Adrian, that treatment cost over $60,000. I know. You paid $60,000 for my sister's medical treatment without telling me. Yes. He met her eyes steadily. And I'd do it again. Elena, that money means nothing to me compared to your peace of mind. I know you're proud and independent, and I know you might see this as charity, but it wasn't. It was me taking care of someone I love by helping the person she loves most in the world. Elena didn't know whether to laugh or cry or scream. You're impossible. I know. Is that a deal breaker? She thought about Jenna, about the relief she had felt when the hospital called to say an anonymous donor had covered the costs, about the nights she had been able to sleep without that crushing weight of worry. She thought about the man standing in front of her who had given her sister a chance at health without asking for anything in return. It's not a deal breaker, but from now on, we make decisions together. No more grand gestures without discussion. Heck, live with that, Adrian said, relief flooding his face. As long as you can live with the fact that I'm going to want to spoil you sometimes. Sometimes, Elena agreed. But I'm still paying my own rent and buying my own coffee, even though I'm apparently terrible at making coffee, and yours is much better. Elena laughed. Yes, even though. They spent the rest of the morning talking, really talking, about expectations and boundaries and what dating would look like now that they weren't pretending. Adrian confessed that he had been planning to tell her how he felt for weeks, but kept losing his nerve. Elena admitted that she had been half in love with him since the company Christmas party, too. Years ago, when he had noticed she was sitting alone and spent an hour talking to her about her favorite books instead of networking with potential clients. By afternoon, they had moved to her couch. Elena curled against Adrian's side while they ignored the constant buzzing of their phones. The world wanted to know about Adrian Blackwell's dramatic declaration, but for now, the world could wait. I should probably call my sister, Elena said eventually. She sent me about 20 increasingly frantic messages. And I should call my mother before she shows up here to make sure I haven't messed this up, Adrian added. But neither of them moved, content to stay exactly where they were. Over the following weeks, Elena and Adrian navigated their new reality with a mixture of joy and adjustment. True to his word, Adrian had her promoted, and Elena threw herself into her new role with enthusiasm. Working on a different floor meant they saw each other less during the day, which made their evenings together even more precious. The media attention was intense for a while. Several outlets ran stories about the Cinderella romance between the billionaire CEO and his former assistant. Vanessa Sterling gave an interview calling their relationship inappropriate and Adrian emotionally unstable. But the comments section was flooded with people defending their love story and criticizing Vanessa's obvious jealousy. Harrison Blackwell, surprisingly, became one of their biggest supporters. He invited them to Sunday dinners at the estate and seemed genuinely charmed by Elena's directness and intelligence. Grace simply hugged Alina every time she saw her and told Adrian repeatedly how proud she was that he had finally found someone real. Jenna recovered beautifully from her treatment. And when she was finally healthy enough, Adrian flew both her and Elena's father out to Seattle to meet properly. Watching Adrian nervously try to impress her construction worker father while Jenna teased them both mercilessly was one of Elena's favorite memories. 6 months after the gala, Adrian took Alina back to the Blackwell estate for another party, this time a summer garden celebration. As they walked through the same garden where Vanessa had confronted her, Alina marveled at how much had changed. "Remember when you brought me here as your fake girlfriend?" Alina asked, squeezing Adrian's hand. "How could I forget? It was the night I stopped lying to myself about what I wanted." They reached the fountain where Alina had sat, heartbroken and ready to run. Adrian stopped walking and turned to face her. And Elena's breath caught when she saw him reach into his jacket pocket. "Adrian," she whispered. "I know we said no grand gestures without discussion," he said, pulling out a small velvet box. "But I talked to your sister and your father, and they both gave me their blessing. I talked to Charlotte, who told me I was an idiot if I didn't do this soon. I even talked to my mother, who cried and said it was about time." He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, the diamond catching the late afternoon sun. But what made Elena's eyes fill with tears was the band itself, which was engraved with tiny stars. "You told me once that you used to make wishes on stars when you were a little girl," Adrian said softly. "You said you wished for a life that felt like magic, for a love that was real, for someone who would see you for exactly who you are." He knelt down on one knee, and Elena's hands flew to her mouth. "Alina Carter, you are my wish come true. You're the magic I didn't know I was missing. The reality that's better than any fantasy, the person who sees all of me and loves me anyway. I know we started with a fake date and a business arrangement, but what we have now is the most real thing in my life." Tears were streaming down Elena's face as Adrian looked up at her with absolute certainty in his eyes. "Will you marry me? For real this time. No pretending, no acting, just us and this love that keeps growing every single day." "Yes," Alina sobbed, dropping to her knees in front of him. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger and then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like tears and laughter and the promise of forever. Around them, the garden erupted in applause. Alina looked up to see both their families watching from the terrace. Grace crying happy tears, Harrison beaming with pride, Charlotte jumping up and down with excitement, and Jenna recording everything on her phone. "Did you plan this whole thing?" Alina asked, laughing through her tears. "I might have coordinated with a few people," Adrian admitted. "Is that okay? I know we said we'd make decisions together, but I wanted this moment to be special." "It's perfect," Alina assured him. "You're perfect. Well, not perfect, but perfect for me." "I love you," Adrian said, kissing her again. "My fake girlfriend, my real love, my future wife." "I love you too," Alina whispered against his lips. "Though I have to say, this is way better than the $10,000 you originally offered me." Adrian laughed, the sound pure and joyful. "Much better deal for me too. I get you forever, instead of just one night." They walked back to join their families hand in hand, Elena's ring catching the light with every step. As everyone surrounded them with hugs and congratulations and demands to hear every detail of the proposal, Alina caught Adrian's eye across the crowd. He smiled at her, that same genuine smile she had taught him during their practice sessions. And she smiled back, knowing that every step of their unconventional journey had led them exactly where they were meant to be. The fake date had become real. The performance had revealed the truth. And the boss who had needed a temporary girlfriend had found his permanent future. It wasn't a fairy tale because fairy tales weren't real. But this love built on friendship and trust and choosing each other every single day. This was better than any story Alina could have imagined. 1 year later, they married in the same garden where Adrian had proposed, surrounded by everyone who mattered. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Adrian whispered in Elena's ear, "Thank you for agreeing to fake date me." Alina laughed. "Thank you for being brave enough to make it real." "Yes. Best business decision I ever made," Adrian said, pulling her closer. I'm pretty sure mixing business with pleasure is generally considered a bad idea, Alina teased. Then we'll be the exception that proves the rule. And they were. Because sometimes the best love stories start with a lie that becomes the truest thing you've ever known. With a performance that reveals your authentic self. With a single night that changes everything forever. Sometimes Cinderella doesn't need a fairy godmother. She just needs a boss brave enough to admit he's been in love with her all along. And sometimes, the girl who agreed to fake date a millionaire for one night ends up with something far more valuable than money. A partnership built on equality. A love built on friendship. And a happily ever after that's completely, perfectly, wonderfully real. Emma Caldwell tugged at the hem of her borrowed dress for what felt like the 100th time that evening. The soft pink fabric was beautiful, but it belonged to a world she did not inhabit. Around her, crystal chandeliers cast golden light over guests who wore confidence as easily as their designer clothes. The Grandview Hotel ballroom buzzed with conversations about stock portfolios, European vacations, and country club memberships. Emma felt like an actress who had forgotten her lines. Her cousin Melissa had insisted she attend the wedding reception, promising it would be fun. But Melissa was now surrounded by her new husband's wealthy friends, leaving Emma to navigate the social minefield alone. She clutched her small purse and edged toward the exit, hoping to slip away unnoticed. That was when she saw him walking directly toward her, tall and broad-shouldered. The man wore a perfectly tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Emma made in 3 months at Sunrise Bakery. His dark brown hair was slightly tousled, and there was something urgent in his green eyes as he approached. Before Emma could move, he was standing in front of her. "Please help me," he said quietly, his voice low and surprisingly gentle. "I need you to pretend we're together. Just for a few minutes." Emma blinked at him, completely bewildered. "Excuse me? I know how this sounds." He glanced over his shoulder where 2 women in expensive gowns were clearly watching him. "Those ladies have been trying to set me up with various relatives all night. I just need a moment to breathe, please." There was something genuine in his desperation that made Emma's natural kindness override her confusion. "Okay, what do I do?" Relief washed over his features. "Just stand here and talk to me like we know each other. That's all." He guided her gently to a quieter corner near the tall windows overlooking the city. Emma noticed how careful he was, not to touch her more than necessary, his hand barely grazing her elbow. When they stopped, he let out a long breath. "Thank you. I'm James, by the way. James Thornhill." Emma Caldwell. She studied him curiously. "Do people always chase you at parties?" "Only at events like these, where everyone thinks they know what's best for my life." James ran a hand through his hair, looking tired. "I've been a widower for 3 years. And apparently that means I'm fair game for every matchmaking attempt in the city." "Sorry about your wife." Emma's voice softened with genuine sympathy. "Thank you." James looked at her more closely now, seeming to really see her for the first time. "You don't seem like you want to be here either." Emma laughed, a light sound that made him smile. "Is it that obvious? My cousin got married today, and somehow I ended up at this reception where everyone talks about things I don't understand. I was actually trying to escape when you found me, so we're both refugees from the same party." James's smile reached his eyes now, transforming his whole face. "What do you do when you're not attending weddings you'd rather avoid?" "I work at a bakery downtown. Sunrise Bakery on Maple Street. I'm an assistant, but I help with decorating cakes and creating new recipes." Emma's face lit up as she talked about her work. "It's not glamorous, but I love it. There's something magical about making things that bring people joy." James listened with an attention that felt rare and precious. Most people at parties like this asked questions without really caring about the answers. But he leaned in slightly, genuinely interested. "That sounds wonderful. What kind of things do you create?" "Well, last week I designed a birthday cake shaped like a castle with edible glitter towers. The little girl who ordered it cried happy tears when she saw it." Emma's eyes sparkled with the memory. Moments like that make everything worthwhile. You must be talented. James seemed captivated by her enthusiasm. My daughter Sophie loves anything with princesses and castles. She would adore something like that. How old is she? 10. She's staying with my mother tonight so I could attend this event. His expression softened when he spoke about his daughter. She's the best thing in my life. After her mother passed, Sophie and I had to figure out how to be a family of two. Some days are harder than others. Emma felt her heart squeeze with compassion. That must be incredibly difficult for both of you. But Sophie's stronger than I am sometimes. James paused, then asked, Do you have children? No, I'm only 20. Not married? No kids. Just me and my tiny apartment and my sourdough starter that I've kept alive for 2 years? Emma smiled self-consciously. My life is pretty simple compared to all this. Simple sounds perfect right now. James glanced around the opulent ballroom with something like weariness. Everything in my world is complicated. Meetings, expectations, maintaining appearances. Sometimes I forget what it's like to just have a real conversation. They talked for another 40 minutes, long after James's excuse for needing her company had passed. Emma learned that he worked in investment banking, that he loved old mystery novels, that he missed cooking homemade meals because he was always too busy. James discovered that Emma had learned to bake from her grandmother, that she dreamed of someday opening her own small bakery, that she believed kindness was more valuable than money. When the reception began winding down, James seemed reluctant to end their conversation. Emma, I know this is going to sound strange given how we met, but would it be all right if I stopped by your bakery sometime? I'd love to try your creations. You really want to visit a small bakery on Maple Street? Emma raised her eyebrows skeptically. It's nothing fancy. Fancy is overrated. James pulled out his phone. May I have your number? Just in case I get lost finding the place. Emma hesitated only a moment before sharing her contact information. As they said goodbye, James's hand briefly touched hers, a connection that felt warm and promising. Walking to her car later, Emma could not stop smiling. She had gone to the reception dreading every moment, and somehow she had met someone who made her feel seen and valued. It seemed impossible that James Thornhill, a wealthy banker in an expensive suit, would actually show up at Sunrise Bakery. But something in his eyes had been sincere. She drove home through the quiet city streets, her heart lighter than it had been in months. Sometimes the most unexpected encounters became the most meaningful ones. Emma did not know it yet, but her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. All because a desperate man had asked her to pretend for just a few minutes. 3 days later, the bell above the bakery door chimed, and Emma looked up from the cupcakes she was decorating to see James Thornhill walking in. Looking slightly nervous, but genuinely happy to be there, James stood in the doorway of Sunrise Bakery, looking slightly out of place in his business suit among the cheerful yellow walls and the scent of fresh bread. Emma felt her heart skip when she recognized him. She had wondered if he would actually come, half convinced their connection at the reception had been a fluke. You came, she said. Unable to hide her smile, I promised I would. James approached the counter, his eyes scanning the display of pastries and cakes. Everything looks incredible. What do you recommend? Emma wiped her hands on her apron, suddenly self-conscious about the flour dusting her clothes. The cinnamon rolls are fresh from the oven, and the lemon lavender cupcakes are my own recipe. I'll take both. James settled onto one of the small chairs by the window, and whatever you're having for coffee. Over the next 2 weeks, James became a regular visitor. He would stop by in the mornings before work or during lunch breaks, always finding reasons to linger and talk with Emma. She learned that he was methodical about his coffee, that he had a terrible sweet tooth he tried to hide, that he listened more than he spoke. He discovered that Emma hummed while she worked, that she remembered every customer's favorite order. Her laughter was contagious. One Saturday afternoon, James arrived with a young girl beside him. She had his green eyes and dark hair pulled into 2 braids, and she clutched a worn stuffed rabbit under her arm. Emma, this is my daughter Sophie. James rested his hand on the girl's shoulder. Sophie, this is Miss Emma. She's the baker I've been telling you about. Sophie looked up at Emma with curious eyes. Daddy says you make magic with frosting. Emma crouched down to Sophie's level, her heart melting. Well, I don't know about magic, but I do try my best. Do you like baking, Sophie? The girl nodded enthusiastically. I help Daddy make pancakes sometimes, but they always turn out lumpy. That's because your father doesn't let the batter rest, Emma said conspiratorially, making Sophie giggle. Would you like to help me decorate some cupcakes? I'm working on a special order for a birthday party. Sophie's face lit up brighter than the bakery's lights. Really? Can I, Daddy? James smiled, a softness in his expression that Emma had not seen before. If Miss Emma doesn't mind having an assistant for the afternoon, I would love the company. Emma stood and extended her hand to Sophie. Come on, let's get you an apron. That afternoon transformed something between the three of them. Sophie proved to be a natural, her small hands surprisingly steady as Emma taught her how to pipe frosting roses. James watched from a nearby table, his laptop forgotten as he observed his daughter's joy. Every time Sophie successfully created a design, she would turn to show her father, and his proud smile made Emma's chest feel warm. Look, Daddy, I made a butterfly. Sophie held up a cupcake decorated with purple and pink frosting wings. That's beautiful, sweetheart. James walked over to examine her work. You're a natural artist. Miss Emma is a good teacher. Sophie beamed up at Emma with pure adoration as the afternoon sun streamed through the windows. Turning everything golden, Emma felt something shift inside her. This was not just attraction to James anymore. This was something deeper, more complex. She was falling for both of them, for the quiet man who looked at his daughter like she hung the moon, and for the sweet girl who had lost her mother too young. When it was time to close the bakery, Sophie hugged Emma tightly around the waist. Thank you for teaching me. Can I come back next week? Anytime you want, Emma promised. Meeting James's eyes over his daughter's head, after Sophie ran ahead to the car, James lingered. Thank you for today. She hasn't been this happy in a long time. Neither have I, to be honest. I enjoyed it too. Emma fidgeted with her apron strings. You have an amazing daughter, James. I'd like to take you to dinner. The words came out in a rush, as if he had been holding them back for weeks. A real date. If you're interested, Emma's smile was her answer. I'm very interested. Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant tucked away on a side street. James had chosen it specifically because it was quiet and intimate, nothing like the flashy places his colleagues frequented. Over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, they talked about everything and nothing. James told her about meeting his late wife in college, about the accident that took her 3 years ago, about learning to be both mother and father to Sophie. Some days, I feel like I'm failing, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. I work too much because I don't know how else to provide for her. But then, I miss important moments. Last month, I forgot about her school play because of a meeting. Emma reached across the table and took his hand. You're not failing. You show up, you love her, you're trying. That's what matters. And James, you're allowed to have a life too. You're allowed to be happy again. His fingers tightened around hers. I haven't felt this way since before the accident. It scares me a little. It scares me too, Emma confessed. But maybe that means it's real. We kissed that night outside the restaurant, a gentle meeting of lips that promised something beautiful and lasting. When they pulled apart, James rested his forehead against hers. I want to do this right, he whispered. With you, with Sophie, I want to build something real. So do I. The following months unfolded like pages in a storybook. James integrated Emma into his and Sophie's life with careful consideration, making sure his daughter was comfortable every step of the way. Sophie adored Emma, often asking when they could visit the bakery or if Emma could come to dinner. Emma taught Sophie more baking techniques, and the girl's confidence grew with every successful recipe. For Sophie's 11th birthday, Emma and James planned a party together at the bakery after hours. Emma had created a 3-tier princess castle cake with towers made of sugar cones and edible pearls. When Sophie saw it, she burst into tears of joy. It's the most beautiful cake I've ever seen. She threw her arms around Emma. You're the best, Miss Emma. I wish you could be with us forever. Over Sophie's head, Emma's eyes met James's. The emotion in his gaze made her breath catch. They both knew what Sophie's innocent wish meant. This was becoming a family, slowly and naturally. It's built on genuine affection rather than convenience. One evening, after Sophie had gone to bed, James and Emma sat on his back porch overlooking the garden. The summer air was warm and filled with the scent of jasmine. "I need to tell you something," James said, his voice serious. "My mother wants to meet you." Emma felt a flutter of nervousness. "That sounds important." "It is. She's very protective of Sophie and of me. After my wife died, my mother became even more involved in our lives. She means well, but she can be difficult." James took Emma's hand. "I want her to meet you because you're important to me." "To us? I want to meet her too." Emma squeezed his hand, trying to sound braver than she felt. "When? Next Sunday?" "Family dinner at her house." James pulled Emma closer. "Fair warning. She's going to ask a million questions and probably judge everything from your shoes to your career choices." "Good thing I'm used to handling difficult customers at the bakery," Emma joked. Though her stomach was already knotting with anxiety, James kissed her temple. "You're going to be amazing. Just be yourself. That's all Sophie and I need." But as Emma drove home that night, she could not shake the feeling that meeting James's mother would be a test she was not sure she could pass. The Thornhill family came from old money and generations of social standing. She was a baker from a working-class background who lived paycheck to paycheck. Would that be enough for a woman who expected her son to marry within his social circle? The question haunted Emma as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. She had fallen completely in love with James and Sophie. The thought of losing them because she did not measure up to some arbitrary standard made her chest ache. But she also knew she could not pretend to be someone she was not. Whatever happened at that family dinner, Emma would have to face it as herself. Hoping that love would be enough to bridge the gap between their different worlds, the Thornhill family estate sat behind iron gates and manicured lawns that seemed to stretch forever. Emma's hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel as she pulled up the circular driveway. James had offered to pick her up, but she had insisted on driving herself. Needing the independence and the escape route if things went badly, James met her at the front door. Handsome in casual slacks and a button-down shirt. He kissed her cheek and whispered, "You look beautiful. Breathe. It's going to be fine." Sophie came bounding down the hallway, her face lighting up. "Emma, you're here. Come see the garden. Grandmother has roses everywhere." But before Emma could follow, a tall woman with silver hair and sharp blue eyes appeared in the doorway to the dining room. Margaret Thornhill wore pearls and judgment in equal measure, her gaze sweeping over Emma from head to toe. "You're the baker," she said, her tone neutral, but her implication clear. "Not an heiress, not a lawyer, not someone from their world. Just a baker." "Yes, ma'am." "Emma Caldwell." Emma extended her hand, willing it not to shake. "Thank you for inviting me to your home." Margaret's handshake was brief and cool. "James speaks highly of you. Sophie talks of little else. I thought it was time we met properly." Dinner was an exercise in polite interrogation. Margaret asked about Emma's family background, her education, her career aspirations, each question designed to highlight the differences between Emma's modest upbringing and the Thornhill legacy. James tried to steer the conversation to safer topics, but his mother was relentless. "So you work at someone else's bakery?" Margaret said over the main course. "Do you have plans to advance your career, or is this a temporary position?" Emma set down her fork carefully. "I love what I do, Mrs. Thornhill. I'm learning the business side while I save money. Eventually, I'd like to open my own place, but I'm taking my time to do it right." How practical. The words dripped with condescension. "Though I imagine it must be difficult to support yourself on a baker's salary. The cost of living in this city is quite high," Mother James said sharply. "That's enough. I'm simply making conversation, James." Margaret turned her attention to Emma again. "You must understand my concern. My son is a successful man with considerable responsibilities. Sophie needs stability and someone who understands the demands of our family's position in society." Emma felt heat rising to her cheeks. But before she could respond, Sophie spoke up, her young voice clear and firm. "Grandmother, that's not fair. Emma is the kindest person I know. She makes me and Daddy happy. Isn't that what matters?" The table fell silent. Margaret looked surprised that her granddaughter had challenged her, while James's eyes shone with pride. Emma felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "Sophie," Margaret began, but the girl was not finished. "Mommy would have liked Emma," Sophie continued, her voice wavering slightly but determined. "She always said the most important thing was being good to people. Emma is good to us. She teaches me things and makes Daddy smile again. Why doesn't that count?" James reached over and squeezed his daughter's hand, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Emma could not hold back a tear that slipped down her cheek. Margaret was quiet for a long moment, studying the three of them. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "You're right, Sophie. Your mother did value kindness above all else. Perhaps I've forgotten that in my concern for your future." The tension did not completely disappear, but something shifted. Margaret began asking Emma genuine questions about baking, seeming surprised by the complexity and artistry involved. By the time dessert arrived, the conversation had become almost pleasant. As they were leaving, Margaret pulled Emma aside while James was helping Sophie with her coat. "I was harsh with you tonight," the older woman said quietly. "I apologize. Losing my daughter-in-law was devastating, and I've been terrified of James and Sophie getting hurt again. But I can see that you care for them genuinely. That matters more than I wanted to admit." Emma nodded, accepting the olive branch. "I do care for them, Mrs. Thornhill, very much, and perhaps we can start over. Call me Margaret." 3 months later, Emma was supervising the installation of new ovens when James appeared at the bakery with an enormous grin on his face. "I have news," he announced. "Remember that property you liked on 5th Street? The one with the big windows in the corner location?" Emma's heart skipped. "The old bookstore building? It's been for sale forever. Not anymore. I bought it. For you. For your bakery?" James pulled papers from his briefcase. "Consider it an investment in your dream and in our future." Emma stared at him, overwhelmed. "James, I can't accept something that expensive. It's too much. It's not a gift. It's a business investment. You'll pay me back through the profits." He took her hands. "Emma, you're brilliant at what you do. You deserve a space that matches your talent. Let me help make that happen." Tears streamed down Emma's face as she threw her arms around him. "Thank you. Thank you." Opening Emma's second location took 6 months of hard work. She designed every detail, from the vintage-style display cases to the cozy reading nook where customers could enjoy their pastries. Sophie helped choose paint colors and designed the logo, a simple sunrise over a rolling pin. James handled the business paperwork and financing, turning Emma's dream into a practical reality. The grand opening was scheduled for a Saturday in spring. Emma arrived early to do final preparations, her stomach fluttering with excitement and nerves. She was arranging fresh flowers on the tables when she heard the door open. "We're not quite open yet," she called without turning around. "Even for your biggest fans." Emma spun to find James and Sophie standing in the doorway. But they were not alone. Behind them stood what looked like half the neighborhood, holding flowers and gift bags and wearing bright smiles. Margaret was there too, looking elegant and surprisingly warm. "What is all this?" Emma asked, bewildered. "We couldn't let you open this place without a proper celebration," James said, walking toward her. "You've worked so hard for this moment." Sophie ran forward and hugged Emma. "We're so proud of you." As friends and customers began filing in, admiring the space and sampling treats, James guided Emma to the quieter back corner near the kitchen. His expression was nervous, but determined. "I've been planning something," he said. "I wanted to wait for the perfect moment, and I think this is it. You're opening this beautiful place that represents your dreams coming true. And I want to be part of all your dreams, Emma. Every single one." He dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Emma gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Emma Caldwell, you walked into my life when I had forgotten how to really live. You brought joy back to our home, taught my daughter to dream big, and showed me that love can bloom more than once in a lifetime. Will you marry me? Will you officially become part of our family?" "Yes." Emma's voice was choked with happy tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." James slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her as the crowd erupted in cheers. Sophie rushed over to hug them both, squealing with delight. Margaret dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, smiling genuinely for the first time since Emma had met her. The grand opening was even more successful than Emma had hoped. Customers loved the warm atmosphere and exceptional pastries. Local food bloggers wrote glowing reviews. Within a month, Emma had hired 2 assistants and was already considering expanding the menu. But the best moment came 6 months later. On a crisp October afternoon, when Emma married James in the original Sunrise Bakery, they had considered fancy venues and elaborate ceremonies. But Emma had insisted on the place where their relationship had truly begun. Surrounded by the scent of cinnamon and vanilla and the warmth of freshly baked bread, Sophie served as maid of honor. Wearing a pale yellow dress and carrying a bouquet of sunflowers, she had written a poem for the ceremony about families being like recipes, requiring different ingredients that blend together to create something wonderful. There was not a dry eye in the bakery. When she finished reading it, Margaret surprised everyone by offering a toast that was genuinely warm. "I'll admit I had my doubts at first," she said, raising her glass. "But Emma has proven that love and character matter far more than social standing or bank accounts. She's brought my family back to life, and for that, I'm eternally grateful. Welcome to the family, Emma." As the sun set and the reception continued, Emma and James slipped outside for a quiet moment alone. The city lights were beginning to twinkle, and the air was cool and perfect. "Happy?" James asked, pulling her close. Deliriously, Emma leaned into his embrace. "Who would have thought that a desperate plea at a party would lead to all this? I think about that moment constantly." James kissed her forehead. "I was so lonely that night, so tired of pretending. And then you appeared, kind and real and perfect. You saved me, Emma. You saved each other," she corrected gently. "You believed in my dreams when I was too scared to believe in them myself. You and Sophie gave me a family I never knew I needed." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the evening unfold. Inside, Sophie was teaching Margaret how to frost cupcakes, both of them laughing at their messy attempts. Emma's parents were chatting with James's business partners, all social barriers dissolved in the warmth of celebration. "Do you remember what I said to you that first night?" James asked quietly. "When I asked you to pretend. Of course, you said you needed help and asked me to pretend we were together." James turned her to face him, his green eyes serious and full of love. "The irony is that I was asking you to pretend something that became the most real thing in my life. This marriage, this family, this love, it's more authentic than anything I've ever experienced." Emma touched his face tenderly. "No more pretending. Only truth from now on?" "Only truth," James agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss as they returned to the party. Emma caught Sophie's eye through the window. The girl waved enthusiastically, her face glowing with happiness. Emma waved back, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. She had gone to that party months ago, feeling lost and out of place, ready to escape at the first opportunity. Instead, she had found her home, not in a location or building, but in the hearts of 2 people who needed her as much as she needed them. Sometimes the best love stories began with a simple request from a stranger, a moment of kindness that opened the door to forever. The bakery lights glowed warm and golden as friends and family celebrated inside, filling the space with laughter and joy. Emma Thornhill smiled, knowing that every future morning would begin here, in this place she had built, with the family she had found, creating sweetness in all its forms for a world that so desperately needed it, and somewhere in heaven. Emma liked to think a woman named Clara was smiling too, grateful that her husband and daughter had found love again. That happiness had returned to the home she had left behind. That life had continued in the most beautiful way possible. The end. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like. Share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to DCannel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories. The Manhattan skyline glowed against the purple twilight as Jessica Carter saved the final spreadsheet on her computer. Thursday evening at Sterling Enterprises, and empty hallways and the soft hum of air conditioning replacing the usual buzz of activity. She glanced at the clock. 7:15 p.m. Most of her colleagues had left hours ago, but Jessica had stayed behind to perfect every detail of the quarterly financial report. At 26, Jessica had worked at Sterling Enterprises for 3 years, steadily climbing from junior analyst to her current position. Her dedication was unmatched, her attention to detail legendary among the accounting department. But lately, she wondered if her commitment came at too high a price. Her studio apartment in Queens felt more like a hotel room than a home, and her social life consisted mainly of coffee breaks with coworkers. She stretched her arms above her head, feeling the tension in her shoulders from hours hunched over spreadsheets. Her dark hair had fallen loose from its morning bun, and she tucked a strand behind her ear as she printed the final report. The printer hummed to life, spitting out page after page of meticulously compiled data. "Still here, Jessica?" called Tom from passing by with his backpack already slung over his shoulder. "Just finishing up the Pierce report," she replied with a tired smile. Tom whistled low. "Rather you than me. That man terrifies half the office." Jessica laughed softly, though she understood the sentiment. Ethan Pierce had joined Sterling Enterprises as Director of Investment Strategy 6 months ago. Transferred from the Chicago office after his divorce, he was brilliant, demanding, and maintained a professional distance that some mistook for coldness. Jessica had learned to appreciate his direct communication style and high standards. Even when they pushed her to her limits, she gathered the printed pages, sliding them into a leather portfolio folder. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed down her navy blouse and adjusted her glasses. There was no rational reason for her nervousness. She had delivered dozens of reports before, yet something about Ethan Pierce made her heart race in ways she refused to examine too closely. The executive floor was even quieter than her own. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city spread out below, millions of lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Jessica's heels clicked against the polished marble as she approached Ethan's office, the sound echoing in the empty space. His door stood partially open, warm light spilling into the hallway. She could see him through the gap, jacket discarded over his chair, sleeves rolled up to his elbows as he studied something on his computer screen. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had run his fingers through it multiple times. Even exhausted and focused, he carried an intensity that made Jessica's pulse quicken. She knocked gently on the doorframe. "Come in," he said without looking up. "Mr. Pierce, I have the quarterly report you requested." At the sound of her voice, his head lifted and his expression softened slightly. "Jessica, I was hoping you would finish it tonight." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please, sit. I want to go through some of the projections with you." She entered his office, acutely aware of how intimate the space felt with just the two of them. The usual protective barrier of other employees and daily chaos was gone, leaving only silence and possibility. She placed the portfolio on his desk and sat down. Smoothing her skirt nervously, Ethan opened the report, his eyes scanning the first page with practiced efficiency. Jessica watched his face, looking for any reaction. After 3 years of analyzing numbers, she had learned to read people's expressions when they reviewed her work. But Ethan remained unreadable, his features composed as he turned page after page. "These risk assessments for the European market," he said finally, tapping a particular section. "This is exceptional analysis. How did you factor in the currency fluctuations?" Jessica leaned forward, her earlier nervousness dissolving as she entered her comfort zone. "I used a 3-year historical model combined with current political indicators. The Brexit aftermath is still creating ripples, and I wanted to account for continued instability." "Smart." He looked up at her, and for the first time since she had started working under him, she saw genuine admiration in his eyes. "You have a gift for seeing patterns others miss." Heat crept up her neck. "Thank you. I just try to be thorough. It's more than thoroughness." Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You have intuition that cannot be taught." The compliment hung in the air between them. Jessica suddenly became aware of how late it was, how alone they were, how the soft lighting made his office feel less like a workplace and more like somewhere intimate and private. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan's voice was quieter now, less like her boss and more like a person, of course. "Do you ever feel like you are living half a life?" The question came out of nowhere, catching Jessica completely off guard. Like you are so focused on one thing that everything else just fades away? She blinked, uncertain how to respond to such a personal question. I suppose I do sometimes. Ethan stood and walked to the window, his hands in his pockets. I moved to New York 6 months ago, thinking a fresh start would fix everything. New city, new job, new possibilities. But I brought all my old habits with me. He turned to face her. I work until I am exhausted so I do not have to think about how empty my apartment feels. Jessica's heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice. She stood slowly, drawn toward him despite every professional instinct telling her to maintain distance. Mr. Pierce, I don't think that makes you unusual. A lot of us use work as an escape. Ethan, he corrected softly. When it is just us, call me Ethan. The use of his first name felt dangerous and thrilling. Ethan, she repeated, the word strange on her tongue. He moved closer. She could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. Jessica, I need to be honest with you about something. His eyes searched hers. These past 6 months, working with you, I have looked forward to our meetings more than anything else in my day. Her breath caught. I have to. This is completely inappropriate, he continued, though he did not step back. You work for me. There are policies and protocols and 100 reasons why I should not be saying this. Then why are you? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Because I am tired of always doing the right thing. My entire marriage was about following rules and meeting expectations, and it left me hollow. His hand lifted, hesitating near her face, before gently tucking that loose strand of hair behind her ear. With you, I feel awake again. Jessica knew she should step back, should remind him of professional boundaries, should protect both their careers. But instead, she found herself leaning into his touch. I feel it too. For a long moment, they simply stood there, the city lights glowing behind them, the rest of the world forgotten. Then Ethan's phone buzzed loudly on his desk, shattering the moment. They both stepped back quickly, the spell broken. I should go, Jessica said, her voice shaky. Jessica, wait. Ethan ran his hand through his hair, looking as conflicted as she felt. I am sorry. That was completely out of line. No, it wasn't. She met his eyes steadily. It was honest. And maybe that is exactly what scared me. She turned and walked toward the door, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. As she reached the threshold, his voice stopped her. Jessica. She looked back. Tomorrow, would you have coffee with me? Not as your boss. Just as someone who would like to know you better. Every reasonable part of her brain screamed that this was a mistake. But her heart, that neglected organ she had ignored for so long, whispered something different. Yes, she heard herself say. I would like that. As Jessica walked back to her desk to collect her things, she felt breathless, exhilarated, and terrified, all at once. She had walked into that office to deliver a simple report. She was walking out with something far more complicated and precious, the possibility of something real. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made New York feel alive with possibility. Jessica woke earlier than usual, her stomach fluttering with nervous anticipation. She changed outfits 3 times before settling on a burgundy sweater dress that felt professional, yet feminine. As she applied her makeup with more care than normal, she caught herself smiling at her reflection. The coffee meeting was set for 10 a.m., at a small cafe 3 blocks from the office. Far enough to avoid coworkers, but close enough to seem casual. Jessica arrived 5 minutes early, ordering a latte and claiming a corner table. Her hands wrapped around the warm cup as she watched the door. Ethan entered exactly on time, dressed more casually than she had ever seen him in dark jeans and a gray sweater under his coat. Without the armor of his business suit, he looked younger, more approachable. His face lit up when he spotted her, and Jessica felt her heart skip. I was afraid you might change your mind, he admitted. Sitting across from her, I almost did about 6 times this morning, she confessed with a nervous laugh. They talked for 2 hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly from childhood memories to favorite books to dreams they had abandoned along the way. Jessica learned that Ethan had wanted to be an architect before his father pushed him toward finance. He discovered that she had once planned to teach mathematics before student loans forced her into corporate life. We should probably head back, Ethan said reluctantly, checking his watch. Though I wish we could stay here all day. As they walked back to the office, something shifted between them. The connection from the previous night had deepened into something more substantial. Jessica felt seen in a way she never had before. Understood beyond her work performance and professional capabilities. But the moment they entered the Sterling Enterprises lobby, reality crashed back. Diana Chen, Jessica's closest friend from the marketing department, was waiting by the elevators. Her eyes widened when she saw Jessica and Ethan arrive together, both flushed and smiling.
Jessica, can I talk to you for a moment?
Diana's tone was carefully neutral, but her expression spoke volumes. In the women's restroom, Diana turned to her friend with concern etched across her features. Please tell me you know what you are doing. You just had coffee, Jessica protested, though the defensive tone in her voice betrayed her. Jessica, he is the director of investment strategy. You report directly to him. Diana gripped her friend's shoulders. I love you, and I want you to be happy, but this could destroy your career. You know how this company is about relationships between superiors and subordinates? We are not in a relationship. We are just getting to know each other. Diana's expression softened with sympathy. Honey, the way you are glowing right now tells a different story. Just be careful, okay? The corporate world is not kind to women who date their bosses. No matter how genuine the feelings are, the warning echoed in Jessica's mind all afternoon. But it could not diminish the warmth she felt when Ethan sent her a text during lunch. Thank you for this morning. You made my day brighter. Over the next 2 weeks, they continued meeting for coffee, then lunches, then dinner after work. They were careful to keep their interactions professional in the office. But the connection between them grew stronger with each conversation. Ethan shared the pain of his divorce. How his ex-wife had accused him of being emotionally unavailable. How he had thrown himself into work to avoid dealing with his loneliness. Jessica opened up about her fear of never being good enough, of sacrificing her personal life on the altar of professional success. I see you. Jessica, Ethan told her one evening over Italian food in a quiet restaurant in Brooklyn. Not just the brilliant analyst, but the woman who hums while she works, who brings homemade cookies for her team on Fridays, who still believes in kindness, even in a cutthroat industry. And I see you, she replied, reaching across the table to take his hand. The man who actually listens when people talk, who remembers details about their lives, who carries the weight of responsibility because he genuinely cares about doing right by others. Their first kiss happened that night, on a quiet street corner under the glow of streetlights. It was gentle and tentative, full of promise and possibility, but paradise never lasts long in the real world. The following Monday, Jessica noticed the whispers, conversations that stopped when she entered the break room. Knowing glances exchanged between coworkers, she tried to ignore it, burying herself in work, but the uncomfortable feeling persisted. During lunch, Diana pulled her aside urgently. The rumors have started. Someone saw you and Ethan at that restaurant in Brooklyn. The story is spreading through the office like wildfire. Jessica felt her stomach drop. What are people saying? That you are sleeping with the boss to get ahead. That your recent assignment to the Henderson account was favoritism. That Ethan is taking advantage of a younger employee. Diana's voice was pained. None of it is fair or true, but you know how quickly these things spiral. By Tuesday afternoon, Jessica was called to Human Resources. Patricia Morrison, the stern head of HR, sat behind her desk with a file folder open in front of her. The 40-minute conversation was professional, but pointed. Sterling Enterprises had strict policies about relationships between supervisors and subordinates. The situation created conflicts of interest and opened the company to liability concerns. I want to be clear, Ms. Carter, Patricia said firmly. Your job performance has been exemplary. This is not about your capabilities. However, the appearance of impropriety can be as damaging as actual impropriety. We need to address this situation immediately. Jessica left the HR office feeling humiliated and angry. She had worked so hard to build her reputation, and now it was being questioned because of her personal life. That evening, she and Ethan met at their cafe, both visibly shaken. They called me in too, Ethan revealed, his jaw tight. Patricia laid out our options. One of us transfers to a different department where there is no reporting relationship. One of us takes a position at another Sterling office. Or one of us leaves the company. This is not fair, Jessica's voice cracked. Why should we have to choose between our careers and each other? Because that is how the corporate world works. Ethan reached for her hand. But Jessica, I want you to know something. Whatever you decide to do, it will not change how I feel about you. If you need to distance yourself from me, I will understand. She looked at him, this man who had awakened something in her she thought had died years ago. What if I do not want to give you up? Then we figure this out together. Over the next week, the pressure intensified. Jessica's coworkers began treating her differently. Some with cold professionalism, others with barely concealed judgment. Even her work assignments seemed to carry additional scrutiny. As if everyone was looking for evidence that she had not earned her position fairly, the breaking point came during a department. A senior analyst who had always resented Jessica's rapid advancement made a snide comment about people who climbed the ladder through their personal lives rather than their professional skills. The room fell silent. Ethan's face darkened with anger, but before he could respond, Jessica stood. I have worked at this company for 3 years, she said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. I have exceeded every performance metric taken on projects no one else wanted, and consistently delivered results that benefited this entire department. My personal life is exactly that, personal, and I will not apologize for finding happiness or let anyone diminish my accomplishments. She gathered her materials and walked out. Leaving stunned silence in her wake, that evening, Ethan appeared at her apartment door. That was the bravest thing I have ever seen, he said when she opened the door. It was probably career suicide, she replied, but allowed him to pull her into an embrace. Patricia called me after the meeting, Ethan said softly. Sterling is offering you a position as regional financial manager at the Boston office. It is a significant promotion with a substantial raise. You would have your own team and complete autonomy. Jessica pulled back to look at him. Boston. That is 4 hours away. I know. His expression was pained. But it also gets you out from under my supervision. It gives you a chance to prove yourself in an environment where no one questions your capabilities. And what about us? Ethan cupped her face in his hands. I have been thinking about that. I could leave Sterling, start my own consulting firm. I have been wanting to do it for years, but never had the courage. My work is not tied to a physical location the way yours is. I cannot ask you to give up your career for me. You are not asking. I am choosing. He kissed her forehead. Jessica, my marriage failed because I never put relationship before ambition. I learned the hard way that professional success means nothing if you are alone. I do not want to make that mistake again. They spent hours talking through scenarios and possibilities. The Boston position was genuinely impressive. The kind of opportunity that could launch Jessica's career into an entirely new trajectory. And Ethan's dream of independent consulting had been brewing for years. What if we fail? Jessica whispered as they sat together on her couch, the city lights twinkling through her window. Then we fail together, Ethan replied. But what if we succeed? Jessica accepted the Boston position the following Monday. The announcement was met with mixed reactions at Sterling Enterprises. Some colleagues congratulated her genuinely, others whispered that she was running away from scandal. Jessica held her head high, focusing on the opportunity ahead rather than the judgment behind her. Her last 2 weeks in New York passed in a blur of transition meetings and farewell lunches. Diana threw her a goodbye party at their favorite wine bar, where tears and laughter mixed freely. You were doing the right thing, Diana assured her. Sometimes we have to leave to grow, even when it hurts. Ethan submitted his resignation the same week, shocking the executive team. He had already secured 3 consulting clients and was in negotiations with 2 more. The risk was terrifying but exhilarating. On Jessica's last day, Ethan met her outside the Sterling building after she had turned in her security badge and cleared out her desk. They stood on the sidewalk, surrounded by rushing pedestrians, both carrying boxes of their professional lives. 1 year, Jessica said firmly. I need 1 year in Boston to prove to myself that I earned this position, to show that I can succeed completely on my own merit. 1 year, Ethan agreed. I will build my business. You will build your career, and we will figure out what comes next. You could meet someone else. Jessica's voice wavered. Someone less complicated. Ethan set down his box and pulled her close, right there on the busy Manhattan street. Jessica Carter, I waited 34 years to feel this way about someone. I can wait another year. Boston welcomed Jessica with autumn leaves and new beginnings. Her apartment in Back Bay was small but charming, with exposed brick walls and large windows that let in morning light. The sterling Boston office was smaller than New York, the friendlier culture and less cutthroat competition. Her new team consisted of 4 analysts, all eager to learn from her. For the first time in her career, Jessica had the authority to implement her own methods and strategies. Within 3 months, her department had increased efficiency by 18%. Within 6 months, she was being consulted on projects across the entire Northeast region. But the real transformation happened outside of work. Jessica joined a community orchestra, picking up the violin she had abandoned in college. She made friends who knew nothing about finance or corporate hierarchies. She discovered coffee shops and bookstores and running trails along the Charles River. She rediscovered herself as a complete person. Not just a professional identity, Ethan's consulting firm. Pierce Strategic Solutions exceeded all expectations. His reputation for brilliant analysis combined with ethical practices attracted clients quickly. He hired 2 associates and leased office space in downtown Manhattan. He also traveled frequently, which kept him busy and distracted from the loneliness of Jessica's absence. They talked every day, sometimes for hours, sometimes just quick check-ins between meetings. They video chatted on weekends, sharing their lives through screens. The distance was difficult, but also clarifying. They learned to communicate openly, to support each other's victories, to comfort each other's defeats. I miss you became their constant refrain, but also their reminder of what they were building toward. 7 months into their separation, Ethan visited Boston for the first time. Jessica met him at South Station, her heart pounding as she scanned the crowd for his familiar face. When their eyes met across the busy terminal, both broke into spontaneous smiles. You look different, Ethan said, pulling her into an embrace. Different how? Lighter, happier. He studied her face. Boston is good for you. They spent the weekend exploring the city together, walking the Freedom Trail, eating cannoli in the North End, visiting the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. It felt like a honeymoon and a reunion all at once. Sunday night, as they sat on her couch with takeout containers scattered on the coffee table, reality returned. For more months, Jessica said softly. For more months, Ethan echoed. And then what? Then we figure out our next chapter. The final months flew by quickly. Jessica was offered a permanent position as regional director, overseeing all Sterling offices in New England. The promotion came with a significant salary increase and the respect she had fought so hard to earn. No one in Boston questioned whether she deserved her position or whispered about her personal life. Ethan's firm secured a major contract with a Boston-based investment company, giving him a legitimate business reason to spend significant time in the city. He began looking at office spaces in Boston, considering expansion. On the 1-year anniversary of Jessica's move, Ethan arrived at her apartment with a bouquet of flowers and a serious expression. They sat together on her couch, the same couch where they had made their agreement to wait. I've been thinking, Ethan began, taking her hands in his. This year apart was necessary. We both needed to prove to ourselves and the world that we could succeed independently. But Jessica, I do not want to spend another year without you. Neither do I, she admitted, tears forming in her eyes. Move in with me. Not in New York, not in Boston, but somewhere that is ours. Somewhere we choose together. He pulled out a small velvet box. And marry me? Not because it is convenient or expected, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Jessica opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. Through her tears, she laughed. "You are supposed to get on one knee." "I am a consultant, not a traditionalist." Ethan grinned, but he slid off the couch onto one knee anyway. "Jessica Carter, will you marry me?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. Yes to all of it. 6 months later, they married in a small ceremony in a botanical garden in Providence, Rhode Island. The city that sat perfectly between Boston and New York, Diana was Jessica's maid of honor. Ethan's younger brother served as best man. Jessica's team from Boston attended, as did several of Ethan's clients who had become friends. They bought a house in Providence with an office for Ethan's consulting work and a music room for Jessica's violin. She continued as regional director, traveling to Boston 3 days a week. He split his time between clients in both cities. They created a life that honored both their professional ambitions and their personal happiness. 2 years after that night, when Jessica had walked into Ethan's office to deliver a simple report, she stood in their home office, reviewing quarterly projections for her region. Ethan entered with 2 cups of coffee, setting one beside her computer. "Working late again?" he asked, kissing the top of her head. "Just finishing up." She saved her document and turned to face him. "Remember when we thought we had to choose between career and love? Our younger, more foolish selves," Ethan smiled. "We were not foolish. We were scared." Jessica stood and wrapped her arms around his waist. "But we chose both. And we built something better than either of us imagined." "The best investment I ever made," Ethan murmured against her hair. Outside their window, the Providence skyline glowed softly in the evening light. Inside, surrounded by the life they had built together through courage and patience and unwavering faith in each other, Jessica Carter and Ethan Pierce had found something rare and precious, a love that enhanced rather than competed with their ambitions. A partnership that made both of them better, stronger, more complete. She had walked into his office breathless with possibility. She had walked out into a life beyond her wildest dreams, and every single risk, every difficult choice, every moment of uncertainty had been worth it. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like. Share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.